Nick, welcome to the first 365 podcast, bro. Thank you for making it down. I know you've had some issues. What's been going on the way here?
Oh man, well, thank you for having me first and foremost, but it has been an epic journey getting here. We've been up the wall with the new gym opening in about 3 weeks' time, so everything's been a little bit chaotic. So I booked the hotel yesterday. Me and my friend Aaron, we get to the Abyss yesterday, which is obviously just across the road. Give my booking to the woman. She said, "What's your surname?" I said, Nick Wickham. She looks at me. She looks at her colleague next to her, and she's checking the booking reference, looking at me. Looks really confused. I said, what's up? You booked it for the 16th of April. Oh, no. But the car park was dead, so I was like, we'll just book a room, don't worry about it. She said, oh, sorry, we're fully booked.
Shit.
Yeah, so we ended up in a travel lodge around the corner, which was pretty dire experience. Gets to midnight and our radiator catches on fire. Gasses the whole third floor out with chemical smoke. So we had the whole landing out, absolute chaos. And the night manager comes in, I had absolutely no idea what he was doing. And he says to us, so do you need another room or do you just want some air freshener?
That's Birmingham. That's Birmingham customer service.
The whole place is covered in smoke and my man offers me an air freshener. I'm just like, no, this is...
Get me out of here.
This is chaos, yeah.
Well, look, you're here now, bro. So look, a lot of our relationship, we've been following each other, we did a bit of work together, and I really started paying attention to what you were saying during the time of the pandemic, because you were one of the few who actually, I'd say, rebelled against the policy, against the lawmakers and what they were trying to enforce on all of us. Walk me through that, because apparently, from what I saw, they're trying to shut down your gym and you weren't having it from what I could see.
Yeah, so when Boris first announced that we were closing, it wasn't the national lockdown, it was when they introduced the tier system. So Liverpool was going to be the guinea pig for the tier system. We were going to go first into what was then tier 3. And they announced on television what it was going to be. They put the policy online for anybody to read. So we had a good look through the policy. And Boris comes on television the following day. He said, right, Liverpool's going into tier 3. And he listed off all the industries that were bound to close. Leisure was to close, gyms were to close. We're after, we've been through the legislation thoroughly. There's no mention of gyms closing whatsoever. Obviously, he's on national television saying gyms are to close. So we read through it. I spoke to a couple of local gym owners because we've got quite a good network in Merseyside where we are. We said, look, this isn't right. We spoke to a couple of our local politicians, our MPs, and they said, look, you're right. It doesn't say anything about this in the legislation, but there's nothing we can do. It's what the Prime Minister said. So we took a stance. We said, what are we going to do? Are we in? Are we just going to stay open? If we do it, it needs to be all together. Yeah. Because one person's voice isn't enough. We either stand together or we don't do it at all. So we took the decision to say, right, we're not going to close. It's not in the legislation. Legally, you've got no power to close us, whether you're saying it on television or not. The legislation says otherwise. So I took a video outside my gym the day before tier 3 was due to come in and said, look, we're not going to close. We don't know what's going to throw at us. We don't know if they're going to put us in jail, hit us with fines. We just don't know at this point because this was early days. So I put the video up. First video goes viral. A few million views between Instagram, Facebook. Police come to visit us straight away. Heavy-handed. The first time they come was 4 or 5. This was the day before. I said, Nick, just to let you know, if you stay open tomorrow, there's going to be trouble. We're going to have to come and close you down, whatever else. I said, look, guys, all due respect, you've got to do what you need to do. I've got to do what I need to do. They left. Following day, we opened the doors to our members, no issues. By 9:30, we had 8 or 9 police officers in from the Armed Response Division of Merseyside Police. So they come heavy-handed, obviously with the intention of intimidation. Yeah. So they come in looking to muscle us to close down, basically. And they said, look, you need to close, Nick, or we're going to have to issue a £1,000 fine, and then for every 3 hours that then doubles. So the first fine was £1,000, second one 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, then it caps at 10, and then they can issue a £10,000 fine every 3 hours thereafter. And they were good guys, don't get me wrong. I took my camera out, I said, listen guys, I'm going to film this to protect me, to protect you. I'm not trying to be antagonistic. Look, I respect what you do, respect what I've got to do. So, and they were cool, to be fair. I said, look, this is going to be online, so do yourself a favor, do your social distancing, whatever it is that you need to do, I'm going to respect you. So I filmed the video. I said, look, I'm staying open, issue me the fine. And they tried to talk me down like, Nick, look, we really don't want to have to do this. We don't want to have to give you the fine. Please just close, it's no big deal. You're going to have to. I said, look, just give me the fine, guys. You do what you got to do. That's that. So they leave anyway. I took a video of them, panned through the gym, went home. took a video, explained the situation of what had happened, put that on my social media, and straight away, boom, you're talking 10, 15 million views across 3 different platforms. We had news harassing us from day one. Celebrities jumped on it. Like, everybody jumped on it straight away because they knew it. You know, people were sick of it by that point. This is 6 months into the pandemic, and it was just restriction after restriction after restriction after restriction. So we went viral, and we got, you know, we had the New York Times on our doorstep, Daily Mail, Daily Mirror, Telegraph. We had everybody queuing up to try and get a piece of, you know, what was trending at the time. But we had a lot of support, and funny enough, we had a lot of support from the police as well, which was very bizarre. Yeah. So how it went from there was, we knew the police were going to come and issue the fines every 3 hours, and we were going to get a 10 grand fine every 3 hours. So, you know, you're looking at tens of thousands every day. We'd have been closed by day 3. We'd have been bankrupt. So we made the decision to close the front door at the gym, and we had a secret entrance at the back. So we closed the front, so everything looked superficially like it was closed because we have no windows on the ground floors.
Right.
And the police were then coming out, and I'm not exaggerating, 20 times a day
To check.
come and check. But they were that sick of it themselves. It got to the point where they'd come to the gym and they knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I hired extra staff for this period of time. It was only about 2 weeks. I hired extra staff to monitor the CCTV. So whenever the police had come, we'd see them pull up, we'd turn the music down, and everyone would pause. Just
Stop the workout.
Yeah.
It's like
Stop.
that challenge where everyone would just
Yeah,
stop.
stop, pause, Squid Games. Yeah. Stop.
mid
Yeah,
rep.
hold your bench, yeah. So we got to the point where they'd come and they knew we were watching them, and they'd push the back door and they'd look up at the camera and go, "We're leaving." And just voice it over, do you know what I mean? And because they knew it was nonsense, and I'd had a
So there's
conversation.
some humanity in the situation.
Oh, major league. So when I spoke to the police, they said, "Look, Nick, we don't want to do this.
Yeah.
This has come down from our boss's boss's boss.
Yeah.
This isn't something we want to do. We know it's nonsense. We know you're in the right. We've just got to do our job." And I've got a lot of respect for the police, despite the fact I've got, you know, a cloudy past, should we say. I've got respect for the police and what they do, and I've always got on with them. Well, if you treat me decently, I don't care what your job is. If you treat me decently, I'm going to treat you decently. So we had really good rapport with them, to the point where I actually had police officers training in there from different divisions of the police. So I had police officers in, whilst I've got police officers on the outside trying to probe to get in, to the point where we had to let them in at one stage. This must have been about 5 days in. We had police officers in there. I said, "Look, I'm going to have to let these in, so have a look around." So I had to get the police officers in the attic, in the gym.
Jesus.
Hidden up in the gym, while I let other police officers through the door to come in and check everything.
Hey
was
Tom,
okay.
hey Mark.
Yeah. So I've got them hidden in the attic in the gym whilst they're looking around and whatever else, and none of them took it too seriously.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where, because every video that I was putting up at that point was going viral, they were very cautious about how they approach things.
Yeah.
I mean, they were decent people anyway, but they were very cautious, and there was a moment where they were sat in the car park opposite the gym. They'd only normally check for a few minutes and then leave. And I was watching the cameras. I was sat at home, and I knew there was loads of people in the gym. And the police were sat there, and they were sat there for 10 minutes. And I thought, these aren't just checking, they're waiting for someone to come out here. I said, they're wanting something to happen here. So I jumped in the car, and I shot round. I thought, I'm not having this. They're just waiting to make trouble here. So I took my phone out, and I'm walking towards the car with it on film. And at this point, I was a bit annoyed. I was a bit antagonistic, and I'm walking towards the car, and the police officer winds the window down. He's like, "Nick, stop. Please stop recording 1 second. So I was, all right, fair enough. I stopped my thing. He's like, "Look, we're not waiting for people." He said, "I promise you." He gets his phone out. He's like, "Look, we're just ordering from Just Eat. That's why we're still sat here." He said, "As soon as we've ordered from Just Eat,
Oh my God.
we're going to leave." Yeah. So we had this great relationship with the police, and the local MPs got on board, and everybody knew it was nonsense, and we just added pressure on. And if we hadn't had the support of, like, we could have gone about it a completely different way. It could have been us versus the police. And,
Yeah. Which
You
is
know.
what it felt like, and what it seemed like from.
Yeah, and that's what, and at least in my opinion anyway, that's what the powers that be tried to do. Right? Let's create some friction. Let's create some animosity between public and police, and really try and enforce this authoritarian stance that we're taking. Because we had such respect for the police, and they had it for us. They didn't get what they wanted, and the police kind of give us the flexibility we needed to carry on operating. We were respectful for them and made sure that everything looked like it was closed, so they could say, "Boss, no
Nothing going
issues,
on.
everything's closed."
Do you think that without social media in that situation, the respect and the approach would have been the same?
I don't think so. I think the power of social media is the only way that we got anything done in that situation now, because it's a weapon. And if we hadn't have had social media, you'd never have had the press or the backing that we did. So we'd have just been a handful of voices in a little town in the middle of nowhere that nobody knew about. Once we went viral, it's a whole different story. Like politicians, if they can ignore you, they will ignore you. If you have public backing and you have the press behind you, it's a whole different story.
Yeah. I think during that time I sent you a message saying Nick for MP.
yeah. I seen it. Yeah, I mean, and obviously I did.
What was the outcome? What was the outcome with all them fines? Because they still had to issue an X amount of fines. Did you have to pay them? Did they get wiped off? What was the outcome in short from that?
So mine completely disappeared. So what happened eventually, and it took us about 10 days. We launched a petition online. Got like 630,000 signatures, which is huge. The only
whoa, 630,000 signatures, nearly a million signatures.
Yeah. So
which doesn't that mean if it hits a million that it has to be spoken about in the House of Parliament? Oh, it's just 100,000.
Just 100,000. So the only petition in the last 10 years that's got anywhere near the numbers that we did was Marcus Rashford's school dinners for children.
Wow.
So we're the only two petitions to hit that number in the last decade.
It's incredible.
So that's huge. So it gets to 100,000, and we were, off the back of that, we should have automatically had a parliamentary debate. Because of COVID, no debates were taking place whatsoever. So we were in gridlock. So we managed to get in touch with the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. He lives up in Chorley, and he's obviously the main man in Parliament. Gets a meeting with him, meets him in his hometown. Really nice guy, really down to earth. And his daughter had lost her life the year previously. She committed suicide, but to her, he said, her escape was physical activity. He said the only thing that kept her healthy mentally and physically was her access to health and fitness. He said to her, I am really behind this. He said, and I think it's an atrocity that it's been taken away. And as you say, the legislation doesn't check out. I gave him all the statistics. He's like, I'm completely behind you. He said, what I'm going to do for you, Nick. And I was with a couple of other people at the same, there was 3 of us, I think, that were there. He said, what I'm going to do the minute you leave this office, he said, I'm going to phone the Prime Minister and I'm going to get you a debate. And I thought, he's a politician. He's just telling me what I want to hear here. I'm going to go out of here and he's just going to go about his day.
You'll never hear from him again, yeah.
Must have been 3 hours on the phone. Spoke to Boris, your debate's next week. So we got the debate. So we got 630,000 signatures. We get the parliamentary debate. They selected 20 MPs at random to come and sit in this debate and and discuss the subject. All 20 were for allowing us to open and continue. Mm-hmm. So we had the legislation reversed, and it was announced on my birthday. In fact, on the 23rd of October, right, we're pulling this, and all gyms from the 23rd of October are now going to be allowed to open. So the battle lasted only about 2 weeks, but it was intense. And we finally got permission to open, and everything was fantastic, and we celebrated. And that was only short-lived. I think we got about 3 weeks out of that, and then we went back into national lockdown, which was a whole different situation. Yeah. Because in the tier 3 system, the only person that was subject to any to being penalised was me as the business owner. Mm-hmm. If you come to my gym, it's me that gets a £10,000 fine because of the tier system. In the national lockdown, you'd have been subject to fines, I'd have been subject to, every member in there would have been subjected to fines, and that's what changed the game completely. Mm-hmm. So if we'd have stayed open in that point, I'd be putting everybody else at risk. Yeah. So in the national lockdown, we said, right, we can't, it was hard times, people are on furlough, and in Liverpool they tried to take what was furlough, I can't remember exactly what it was 70 or 80%. Yeah. In Liverpool they tried to give us 63%, like we're worth less than the rest of the country. So it wasn't fair at that point to subject people to the fines. So we won the tier battle, which come into effect when we went back into tiers after the national lockdown. But for the national, we just gave all our equipment away to our members. You're talking, hundreds of thousands of pounds in equipment. We just said, look, I trust you, you trust me. We've got a really strong level of rapport. We've got a huge sign at the back of the gym saying the people's gym. That's what we do. Do you know what I mean? We're in the community. We're going to give everybody equipment, no deposit, no nothing. We just trust that you're going to bring it back.
So what, were people just getting like a row machine? So they come back with some massive bag?
Everything, yeah. Everything went.
You get one piece of equipment in your house. Yeah. It's a bench with 2 dumbbells.
Yeah. Treadmill, squat rack.
Just a squat rack.
Everything was gone, man, yeah, everything. But it's the best thing we could do in that situation. But, as I say, we had a huge victory. And if it wasn't for social media, we never would have got there.
What gave you the courage to actually stand up? Apart from obviously you're a business owner, income is at risk. What actually gave you the courage, and where do you find that courage to actually take that all the way to the Prime Minister?
I think there was 3 aspects to it, and that was obviously first and foremost was the physical and mental health angle. Like we knew that it was paramount. We're in a pandemic where the mortality rate is so high for those who are in poor shape, and the correlation between obesity and lack of exercise and the risk of serious illness was so substantial. We knew that we were an essential piece of keeping people healthy. So to close one of the only things that's helping people stay healthy and keep their immune systems high, it didn't make any sense. So you have the health perspective, then you have the business side of things that we wouldn't have survived. But the thing that really gave us the initiative to go forward was the community element of it, and the fact that people were willing to stand up together. And the gym that's closest to me, a gym called Empowered, owned by good friends of mine, Thea and Chris. I had a conversation with them as we were leading into what was going to be the lockdown. And I said, look, are you in? Are we in? And Thea initially pitched the idea to me. She was like, what do you think of this? I was like, look, if you're in, I'm in. And she's like, well, if you're in, I'm in. I said, okay, well, let's approach some other gyms. And if we go at this, we're in this together, and we say, look, no matter what happens, we're in all the way. We commit to this.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and we grew up on a council estate. Both, me, Chris, and Thea, we're very like, we've done the hardships, we've been through all that, and for the most part, you grow up on a council estate, you've got that community aspect, that element. Look, we stick together. We're bottom of the barrel, but we stick together, and that's where our strength is. We don't have the money, we don't have the resources, but we've got each other, and we work together, and if we stay together, we're powerful. So we made that decision, and people really endorsed that. They've seen that we've stood up together, and it was like, look, we're doing this together. This is us. This isn't me fighting my battle. This is us fighting a battle for everybody.
So really, you were the forward-facing spokesperson for a group of individuals. It wasn't just you and your gym against the world. No. And it wasn't, I saw a lot of comments. There was a lot of, not backlash, but there was a lot of trolling going on where people were saying, you were just leveraging it as a publicity stunt. That's obviously not the case, because you were, surrounded by people.
Yeah, and the implication there is that I knew what was going to come next. Not for a second did I think, I own a gym in a little town in the middle of nowhere that you wouldn't have heard of in Merseyside, but you've never heard of my little town. What are the chances of me making a video, and within 3 days, I'm front page of every news network in the world? In the world. Russia, America, Europe, Britain, front page of everything, every news outlet. I couldn't have predicted that. You know what I mean? To say that it would have been a deliberate publicity stunt. If I knew how to do that,
you would have done it.
I'd have done it 10 years ago. Yeah. Of course I would have. That was just just pure coincidence. Yeah. But people were that hungry for somebody to stand up and say, this is enough now. We've had enough. Because think that, the statistics just weren't checking out everything that we were being told. And don't get me wrong, I'm not downplaying the severity of COVID in a general sense. It was something that we definitely should have taken caution with. And at the very first lockdown, we didn't know what it was, so it made sense to say, right, lock this down. And in the March, that's exactly what we did, because we didn't know what we were up against. So you can't blame the politicians in that instance to say, right, we don't know what this is. It's best everyone just take a step back. Let's see what happens. Fear, exactly. Yeah. But then you come 6 months into it, and it's like, hang on a minute, the statistics aren't really checking out here. And the people that are ill are the people that are dying are those who have got high comorbidities, people who are severely obese, people who've got underlying health conditions, people who've got lung conditions. And it didn't check out like and obviously all of this is coming out in the press, even this week now.
Investigations,
The investigations are coming out, text messages are being leaked out. A lot of it was just propaganda, it was fear mongering. But we knew that very early on, because we were reading the statistics, and a lot of people went down the conspiracy route of, going on the far fringes of the conspiracies. But you didn't even need to do that. The government were publishing their own data, and even that didn't make sense. So you don't need to look in all these corners to find these conspiracies.
The Illuminati.
You don't need all of that. It's in black and white. There's the government statistics. That the Office for National Statistics are publishing data. The NHS, British Heart Foundation, World Health Organization, all of their own data. None of it correlated with what was happening. And obviously you had the inflated death toll, because at the time, there's two very different things. There's dying with COVID and dying from COVID, and they're two very different things. And how they were recording it at the time was, if you caught COVID and you had no issues with it whatsoever, you just had a bit of a fever, that was it. Just call it a cold. 10 days later, you get hit by a car and die. You're a COVID statistic.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that went on for 6 months, and we've got these huge numbers.
Yeah, misattributed deaths.
Exactly, yeah, and they were substantial. And that's obviously what caused all the fear mongering. And then you have the PCR test, which has what's called a cycle threshold. So for every cycle of a PCR, they take a sample of DNA, and they amplify it over and over again. So it gets the sample that they have for every cycle that's run, it gets exponentially deeper, and it zooms in and zooms in and zooms in. And it's meant to cap, I think, at like 30 cycles. That's where they say you should cap, because anything beyond that, you're looking for tiny bits of
traces.
Yeah. At which point you wouldn't be contagious anyway. And we're running in the UK, I think the highest off the Office for National Statistics put was like 40 cycles. In the US, 50 cycles. This is meant to cap at 30. So you've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are at home quarantining, can't do their jobs, can't care for people. We've got NHS staff off. Every single hospital's understaffed because everybody's quarantining because of these PCR tests being run at such a high cycle threshold. And we knew this from the very beginning, but nobody was talking about it. And it wasn't until 7 or 8 months down the line, the World Health Organization published on their website, right, we need to lower the threshold. This is the World Health Organization. They published that online. Within 3 days, it disappeared. Luckily, I took a screenshot of it at the time because obviously people were then like, hang on. So a lot of this is incorrect. So they took it down. But then you had, and some of the politicians in the UK, to be fair to them, you had former Prime Minister Theresa May spoke about this in Parliament. Syrian Duncan Smith, one of the former Conservative leaders, he said, look, we've known for months that we've been overcycling the PCR test. So all of these numbers, the death certificates, how contagious it is, how many people were infected, all of this was grossly inflated. And all this fear mongering. So we've crippled the economy, crippled national health by keeping people at home, not allowing them to keep fit, eat well. And all of this, you add on top of that, let's have a eat out to help out. So people are obese, not exercising.
It's like that guy giving you an air freshener last night.
Crippled, isn't it? Yeah. And it's like, well, what can we do? The nation is suffering so badly because we've got such high obesity rates. What can we do to make this pandemic better? How can we make the nation healthier? I know, have 50% off McDonald's. You know what I mean? And none of it made any sense whatsoever. And it's all starting to come to light now, which is all good and well 3 years on.
Yeah.
We're probably not going to see an inquiry for another 10 years.
Yeah. So something happened after the pandemic, which shocked, a lot of people who were following you. You disappeared off the face of the earth, it seemed. Now, when I honestly, I was so used to seeing your content and seeing your posts about everything, right? And obviously your opinions on different matters, but a lot of it was government centered. There was a conspiracy in the back of my mind. You talk about reaching for that. They got him. He's gone. Yeah. Where's he gone? And then I literally, I remember searching your name just to see what's he up to, where's he gone? And there was no post, no social media presence whatsoever, apart from what you've already posted. Walk me through that, because when you came back, and you obviously enlightened me, again, I was shocked. But do you feel like all of your activity provoked and triggered what happened next?
Yeah, it coincided perfectly. Now, as I said earlier, I have a clouded past. I'm.
How clouded are we talking? Rain, sleet, snow,
storm. I had a troubled youth, trouble in school. I left school, went on to do really well for myself. I left school at like 12 years old. I was kicked out of school. I had a career doing free running, worked all over the world, worked for some of the biggest brands in the world. I had a great time. And then I got injured when I was 19 or so. And then from there, I took some time out, and then I ended up working on the doors in Liverpool, doing security, got in with some bad crowds, got into import and exporting drugs, because I had a large international network from when I was free running and working around the world. So I was importing, exporting drugs, really lost my personality, turned into quite a horrible person. I was really violent, and I thrived off the violence at the time. I was competing in bodybuilding. I was taking tons of steroids. My head was completely fried. I completely lost everything that was good about my personality. It turned me into an absolute monster. And eventually I got myself arrested in 2014. 2 different charges. Got arrested on suspicion of possession of a firearm, arrested for possession of Class B, and then went on to get arrested again for exporting Class A, B and C drugs to the island of Jersey and the Channel Islands. Spent 3 years in jail, found myself again, come back around full circle, really found myself again, went back to the person that I was to begin with, and I was in a really good place. I got out of prison at the end of 2017. I was in a really happy place. I had a good network around me. I'd left all of that life behind, everybody I knew in that life behind. And I'd had a great 3 years, and I'd been really successful in everything that I've done business-wise. In 2018, I put two friends together that I'd met in jail. One of them had contacted me, and he was buying cannabis for himself off the dark web. He's like, Nick, he's in Jersey, this guy. He said, the guy that I normally get my bits off on the dark web, his account's disappeared. Is there any way you can help me out? I was like, mate, I've been out of that game for years. He said, yeah, can you just put me in touch with somebody, you know, just as a one-off? So I put him in touch with a friend of mine. Well, I got in touch with a friend of mine. I said, look, he's after this. Can you help him out? He's like, I'm not dealing with him directly. I don't know him. He said, will you just mediate between it? And I'm guilty of that. Do you know what I mean? I'm 100% guilty of that. I mediated between them. They did 2 lots of cannabis or something. It wasn't a lot. And you know, but in the text messages between me and him, it specifically stated, you know, look, I'm retired from all this. This is a one-off. I'll sort you out, whatever else. That happened, and then from May 2018, I'd never heard from either of them since, and I'd never thought about it again for the next 4 years. And then everything happens with COVID, you know, everything's doing really well. I get on the news, you know, I get sponsorships, got my sponsorship from Grenade. I got brought on by Brian Rose, who was running for Mayor of London at the time, wanted me to be his health and wellbeing advisor. You know, I'd have been advising on legislation and policy for 8 million people in London City, do you know what I mean? I'd gone from the top in my young days in my free running career to hitting rock bottom to right back up at the top again. You know, I was in a really good place. I was really grateful for everything I had. I had opportunities thrown at me left, right and centre. I was interviewing for MTV and a few other big jobs. You know, I turned my life around. I was doing tons of charity work. I was in a really, really good place. And then we're coming out the back of the pandemic. This is April, I think we finally come out the lockdowns, April 2021. And I'd just done a 4-page article with the Jersey Evening Post. So, you know, I'd done quite a lot of press at the time, and they approached me like, look, Nick, we want to do a big story on your rehabilitation, the whole journey, start to finish. I said, great, you know, I'm up for that, definitely. You know, I want to promote rehabilitation. You know, I want to demonstrate that, you know, that life isn't all that it's shaped up to be, which it wasn't. Don't get me wrong, I made tons of money, but I was miserable, and I was in a very, you know, amongst a very dark network, and it put me in a dark place. And you become numb to the financial side of things. Doesn't matter how much you're making, nothing. You don't value anything anymore. Do you know what I mean? You're making that much money, nothing. I haven't worked for that, so you don't get that same kind of buzz from it. The same
fulfillment.
Yeah, you just don't get it. Everything goes numb. So I said, look, I'm happy to promote this. I want to put a good message out there, and you know, try and make a good impact if I can. So we do this article, and they release it across 2 days. On Monday, they ran with 2 huge pages right at the start of the newspaper, and it ran first page from free runner to drug runner. So this was on the Monday, huge spread. And on the Tuesday, it was...
Hold on, from free runner to... Shouldn't it be from drug runner to free... No, yeah, from free runner to drug runner.
So at the start, right. So page 1, big one, free runner. From free runner to drug runner. This was on the Monday. And on the Tuesday, they done the continuation, and it was from prison inmate to community hero.
Right.
Because I just won NFM UK's Community Hero Award. I'd just been nominated for UK Active's Physical Activity Champion, and I'd just been put forward for an MBE. This was all in the same few weeks, do you know what I mean? So everything was looking fantastic.
The contrast is so
I know,
crazy to hear.
I was in such a great place. So they ran with this article. I think this was in the February, so this was just leading up to the end of the lockdowns. Fantastic. And then we get to June, I think it was, and there's a knock at the door. Boom, 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 boom. My first thoughts were, my missus is ordering junk off Boohoo or something again, you know what I mean? I'm like, we normally order stuff to the gym so we don't have to open the door, and I'm nudging her. I'm like, babe, get the door, it's for you. It's not going to be for me, get the door. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. So she goes down, opens the door, and all the hair is, please, 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 please. I thought, it's COVID related again. At this point, I've had about 100 interactions with the police. All been pleasant, but it's just you can't
repetitive,
like, again, what is it this time, guys? Do you know what I mean? Oh, we've got a warrant for you to arrest. So what is it now? What you know, what COVID nonsense is it this time? No. It's an arrest warrant from Jersey. I thought, I haven't spoke to anybody from Jersey in nearly half a decade. I said, it must be a mistake. He's like, well, we don't know any more information. We've got to arrest you, and they're going to come and get you. It takes me to the police station. I spent 24 hours in our local police station, and then Jersey police arrived to collect me and fly me back to Jersey. So I'm having a conversation with them on the plane, and they were customs agents. And they were really cool with me, like, oh, Nick, we've seen the article, seen everything you're doing with your life, you know, I'm really sorry that this is happening to you. I was like, well, what is happening to me? They're like, oh, I can't tell you till you get there.
Right.
So I'm sat there on the plane stressing, and I'm thinking, somebody's threw my name in a conversation that I knew nothing about, and this is just one big mistake. I'm going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. We land in the airport, and I meet the head of customs, and he says, Nick, this is from 2018. You know, did you have a conversation with Anthony Dryden and somebody else, I don't even know the other guy who he was then selling onto. I was like, I did.
Oh, so you just
Straight
admitted it
straight away. I said I did. And he's like, you're going to give us your passwords to your phone. We're still in the airport at this bit. I said, listen, you can have passwords to everything that I've got. So I get on the spot. I said, look, I've got nothing to hide. I hold my hands up. What you've just said to me, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have had that conversation. I did. I gave them my phone passwords, my emails, my social media, everything, because I've not been involved in anything like that.
Yeah.
In 7, 8 years.
Were you worried about giving that much transparency before, knowing, first of all, the severity of the charges, second of all, not having anything in writing to say if you are compliant, how it can benefit you?
I was trying to demonstrate that, look, this is a singular event.
Okay.
I'm going to be transparent with you, even though I don't particularly need to be. I want to demonstrate that there's nothing to hide, because I knew that once they go through my WhatsApp, they're going to see conversations between me and some of my friends who were still in that world, of me trying to give them advice to get them out of that world.
Right.
So I thought this can only go in my favour, because all they're going to see is positive things, all the good work I'm doing, me trying to talk people out of that world.
Yeah.
I thought, so go for it, read through everything, no problem. And then I gets to the prison. They book me through, and the customs guys, before they let me go, all shook my hand, wished me all the best. I thought, this is so strange. You just come over to arrest me, but you're wishing me all the best. Like, they knew something was not right. Do you know what I mean, at the time? And it wasn't until about a week into the prison sentence that I got my DEPs through. And your DEPs are like your court files. It's the pack of evidence that they have against you, and it's a disclosure bundle. So you get to see what they have against you and what the charges are. I got it. It's about this thick. It's huge, but most of it's phone data from this other guy's phone. And what had happened was, the year after I'd stopped speaking to him, so this is 2019, he'd got himself arrested on something completely unrelated. Right. They'd taken his phone, examined it, and he contacted me on an application called Signal. It's like similar to Telegram. It's like WhatsApp, or a bit more secure, or at least it's meant to be. Yeah.
Until you give your password over.
Well, so what he'd done was, he'd had his application set to back up to the iCloud. So as much as he thought he'd deleted the messages, they'd already backed up to the iCloud. So when they examined his phone, there was no messages, but they went into his iCloud and pulled the messages down, So they had all of this, and they'd had this evidence for years and done nothing with it.
That's what I mean, it took forever.
They've sat on this for 3 years, and from day one, they had everything. They had pictures of me within this chat, because we were just talking about traveling. This guy's not a big-time drug dealer. This is a guy who's buying some cannabis off the internet, selling some to his mate to fund his own supply. He's not some big-time gangster or anything. So most of our chat is about traveling, personal stuff. There's pictures of me traveling, because I was traveling Asia at the time. It's all chit-chat. So they've got pictures in there of my face, my passport, my social media. So they knew from day one it was me, bang to rights. But they left it for years. It didn't make any sense. Now, it's not a lot of cannabis. So the charge was 3 kilos of cannabis, which is to anybody that actually sells drugs, it's not a lot. Do you know what I mean? You're talking, I don't know.
What's the street value of that?
A wholesale of what it is. So it's pollen. So it's not bud. It's not like the grassy stuff you see. It's pollen. It's like a hard form of it. So you're probably talking $8,000 a wholesale, which is buttons in the grand scheme of things. And they put the street value of it like $60,000 or something. Right. Which is what they do. They exaggerate it. Yeah, of course. And it wasn't a lot. And ordinarily, a charge of that amount, you'd get community service or a slap on the wrist. Something. It's not a big deal, especially in Jersey. And to add insult to injury, in their newspapers in the same week I'd been arrested, and I'm reading this in my cell. Headline: Jersey aspiring to be world leader in cannabis supply. So they're trying to sell as much cannabis as they can to the world, whilst coming to arrest me for a cannabis charge from 4 years ago.
Sending a message.
Yeah. So if it was anybody else, it'd have just been left. So I'm reading through my DEPs, the paperwork. I'm like, why this has gone 4 years? And I see the date of when the investigation was kicked back up again.
It was after the publishing.
And it was 2 weeks after the publishing of this newspaper.
So you feel like the press triggered
100%
the police investigation on yourself. So do you regret that happening, or do you have no regrets?
I don't have any regrets. It wouldn't be fair for me to have regrets because of the people that we helped. So when we had that restriction of Tier 3 abolished, when we had that taken out, we got gym access given back to 6 million people. So whilst it may have inevitably taken a year of my life, we still had a positive influence on 6 million people. And physical exercise reduces your risk of critical illness by COVID by about 50%. So then people are half as likely to get critically ill just because of something that we did.
So your sacrifice was like a year
Yeah,
for the greater good, getting all that attention. It was a double-edged sword for you, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and I don't want to sound like I consider myself a martyr by any means, because I obviously benefited a lot from the whole situation. You know, I got a lot of press. I've got some huge contacts.
Your personal brand has skyrocketed from it.
Yeah. You know, I took a lot from it, so it would be unfair of me to say, oh, I martyred myself for the greater good. I didn't. My intention was just to do something good and small, and it turned out to do something really good for me and really good for a lot of people, and that inevitably landed me in jail. And it cost me a lot. It cost me, you know, it cost me a year and a half of my life. It cost me a lot financially. It cost me a huge deal with JD Sports, with my clothing brand. Yeah. Because when they arrested me, the press ran with, they give it no context. They give the time no context. They said, you know,
convicted.
Yeah. How did the Liverpool Echo done me hard? Really? They ran with the headline of anti-lockdown gym boss exposed as professional drug dealer.
Wow.
Now, I was never anti-lockdown. I was just pro-life and pro-logic and pro-science.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the World Health Organization, for example, don't endorse long-term lockdowns. Yeah. So if I'm anti-lockdown, so is the World Health Organization. Yeah, you know, that's not what I was at all. And exposed as professional drug dealer.
Yeah. Did you read that in prison, or was that?
And that hurt.
So what was it like in prison? Talk to me about that experience, because you've been in twice now, from what you've told me already on here. What do you do? What do you do to, first of all, remain mentally strong in prison? And actually, you know, how do you process that mentally as well? Obviously, you're spending time there, but how do you actually get through that in the most healthy way possible? How did you do that?
It's difficult. And this time, I hold my hands up to this, I didn't. I had a really bad time this time. So the first time I went away, as I say, I wasn't a good person. I went into prison as a really bad person. I was violent, I was mean. You know, I just wanted everything that's wrong with the world. Thought I was a gangster. I was 22, 23 years of age, messing about with people that were way out of my league, playing around with guns, drugs, gangs, you name it. I was a really, really bad person. And I went into prison at rock bottom. So by the time I come out, that progressive journey that I went through, I come out so much better.
Transformed.
And it benefited me so much. Like if I hadn't have had that prison sentence at that time, I'd have ended up dead. And it enabled me to find the person that I was again, and the moment for me, and the moment that I always describe to people, is when I first went into prison. You have a big picture board, and it's maybe, I don't know, a meter and a half wide, and you put your drawing pins and your pictures up. Yeah. So when I get in, I get my friends to send pictures. My then friends. So I've got all pictures on the wall: champagne parties, big penthouses, fancy cars. That's my walls covered in all these materialistic things. And as the weeks go by and the months go by, people stop writing. Then when you first go away, you're the popular guy. Oh, my friend's in prison, he's in the news, all this. And people like that for whatever reason. People want to be associated to that. Oh, I know the bad boy.
The glamour.
Yeah, and it's nonsense. When you get a little bit older, you look at it and you cringe. But when you're 23 years of age and you've got a name for yourself and you're the big guy and you throw money around, yeah, it's the flex, and people are looking and like, oh yeah, that's my guy. Do you know what I mean? Within a month of you being away, and people completely forgot about you because you're not paying for the champagne parties anymore. You know, you're not accommodating their, that lifestyle for them. And they start dropping away. And as they started dropping away, and I come off the steroids and everything was kind of correcting itself, I had people contacting me, like old school friends and stuff like that. People getting back in touch, and my picture wall had started to change, and I didn't realise until it completely changed, because a week would go by and I'd take a couple down of some fancy parties, friends who hadn't kept in touch, put them aside, and I put some new pictures up of friends from like school and stuff like that, and it slowly started transforming, and I didn't see it progressively, and it wasn't until I looked at it, I think it must have been a few months in, I looked at the board and I thought, wow, that's completely different to what I come in as. It's gone from all these champagne parties and everything else to pictures of me free running with friends, traveling, the contrast, you'd think we were two entirely different people. And that was the wake up moment to me of, that's what really matters. Yeah. Not all that nonsense. This is exactly what matters. And then the journey from there transformed me completely. And I spent a lot of time educating myself and went through the system and tried to help other people. And I was a drug mentor when I was in there, and I was doing everything that I could to help other people along that same kind of path. And I took a lot away from that first sentence, and as I say, as strange as it sounds, I'm grateful for that prison sentence. But this time round, I went in at the highest point of my entire life. So the only way for me to go was down.
Yeah.
And I stressed and I stressed and I stressed, and I'd not long been diagnosed with ADHD, and they put me on Ritalin, and it's amphetamine based. So I'd gone in, and the psychiatrist wouldn't issue me it until I'd been reassessed. So I had to go cold turkey from amphetamine as soon as I went in. Mm-hmm. So within the first month of me being in, I'm having night terrors, cramps, sweats, crying my eyes out all the time, really tough. My nan was really ill, and she's my closest relative. I don't really have much of a relationship with my mum. Mm. So, you know, I'm it's killing me, I'm crying. We lost the JD deal. I had two commercial property deals going through, they got pulled. So I've got all this business stuff collapsing around me. I've got, you know, going through these withdrawal symptoms. Shortly into my sentence, my nan passed away. So I lost my nan. I lost one of my best friends who died shortly after my nan. Then me and my partner split up. All of this happened within the space of probably 4 months. So I'm borderline suicide at this point. I've gone from the highest point of my life, from being super successful business-wise, you know, people want a part of my life. They want me to be, you know, part of their projects, nominated for an MBE, to boom, rock bottom. And there's nothing, I'd like to say there was anything positive I could have taken from this sentence, but there was absolutely nothing. And it was just nothing but hardship, self-pity, regret, hindsight. You know, it was traumatic, and there's not a lot you can do in prison. Like the system is failed. You know, it's an absolute failure. You go in and you spend 23 hours a day on a bunk bed with a stranger, sharing an open toilet, and that's all you've got. There's no you don't get access to education, you don't get access to employment, you get nothing. You get £3.50 a week, and that's it. You get, you know, the worst food you could possibly imagine. You got your £3.50 to spend. Like, if you had no money, and I'm one of the fortunate ones, if you go in there and you don't have a friend network, you've got nothing. You've got £3.50 a week. Now, if you smoke, you're doomed. If you want a stamp to write a letter to a family, how are you going to do that? How are you going to pay for phone credit, food, stamps? You just can't do it, and people suffer, and it's just a giant pit of misery. And that just exacerbates everybody's anger and hatred towards the system. So it's just a cesspit of violence and anxiety and depression, and it's a...
So the energy in there spiritually is just at a really dead. Low frequency.
Yeah, and everybody just hates every single day. And
they got all that anger to the system, which obviously they can't take out, so then it naturally would turn on each other, wouldn't it?
And that's exactly what happens. And for them 23 and a half hours a day, you're confined to your concrete box, and you have nothing, and you just stress and stress and stress and stress. So for
horrendous.
So for that half an hour a day when you're let out, so if you can imagine, if you put a load of bulls in individual cages and you're just prodding them all day long, you prod, like they do with dog fighting. They torture the dogs in the cages to build them up. And that's exactly what happens in prison. You've got 23 and a half hours a day where people are just tormented and stuck in a box. Then the door opens for half an hour. So as soon as the door opens in the morning for half an hour, you get what's called association, recreational time. You get out to get your shower. You've got to get shower and everything else all done in 30 minutes. Because there's so much tension on the wing, when them doors open, all that tension spills straight out. So within 30 seconds of the door being open, someone's face has been sliced open, someone's been swilled with a kettle full of boiling water and sugar. It's chaos. Yeah. And that happens day in, day out. Day in, day out, and trying to maintain any sense of positivity or doing anything productive whatsoever when all you're doing is watching daytime TV and then listening to people fight straight away as soon as the door opens. You've got to walk through all that just to get a shower, just to maintain a basic level of hygiene. You have to go through the zoo that is a prison wing and endure it all. Yeah. I just hope that you don't catch some ricochet on the way to the shower. And it's a horrible environment to be in, and that's why. You know, in the UK, we have some of the highest reoffending rates in the world and some of the highest imprisonment rates in the world, because we're failing people time and time again. Because if you put somebody in jail, you just put your normal guy in jail, you know, he's made a mistake, and people make mistakes. Don't get me wrong, there's some people that really do deserve to be there, but you're talking 2, 3, 4% of the people there. A lot of them have just made mistakes. Took a left when they should have took a right. They go in there, you've now got a prison sentence, that's on your record for life. And you come out, you now spend 3 years in there. So if you had a mortgage, you've defaulted on your mortgage, you've lost your house. Most relationships don't survive prison, so you probably lost your wife. Kids probably going to resent you if they're old enough to know what's going on, because you're now the talk of the school, because people can Google.
It's embarrassing, yeah.
So you're losing your family, you're losing your partner, you're losing your job, you're probably losing your home. And all this time while you're in prison, There's no preparation for you getting out. There's no employment opportunities. There's no housing opportunities. And then you just get dumped outside the prison gates with your 1 week benefit. So they give you about £70. Go. Now you try getting a job with prison on your record. You've now lost your kids, your wife, your job, your mortgage. You've got £70 to your name. You can't get a job anywhere because you've got this on your record. So most people who have been in for drugs, and you're probably talking 50% of the prison population, maybe more, what are you going to do?
You're going to go back to
You're going to go straight back. You're
survival
going to
route.
go the only way that you can go. Because if you go to Aldi and ask for a job, yeah, but you've been in prison.
It's tough, man. Look, I'm an employer, you're an employer. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you see CVs, you want the best potential candidate for any role. If you've got two people with equal skills, and one of them
One's got a record.
One's got a record. You've got to be honest. You're going to be biased towards the one who has not made that mistake.
Of
you know
course.
what I mean? And that's just being honest with the way that the world is right now. Hearing that story is actually giving me a few goosebumps, bro, because that is actually traumatizing. And trauma obviously plays a part in all of our lives at some point. That's brutal, man. You know, hearing your perspective on that so vividly, it makes me feel quite sick to my stomach, bro.
It's hard, man.
Horrendous. And I'm, you know, to hear how you went from top of your game, rehabilitated, feeling like you were on track for fulfilling your potential is what we're talking about, to then just being literally at your doorstep, ripped out of bed, on a plane, here's your charges, and then you're back in and everything's just dissolving away. It's horrendous to even hear about that. You know, on social media we see the release day, and we see the Rolls Royces, and we see the bottles of champagne spraying, and we see, you know, guys getting rollies slapped on their wrist as soon as fresh home, fresh out, all of this kind of mantra, and it glamorizes this whole, it's like a glamorization of doing something wrong, doing your time, and then coming out and being celebrated for surviving that environment, or just being somebody associated to someone who came out of that, which, as you've said, still to this day, people they don't want to be the guy going in, but they want to be the guy who knows the guy going in, so they can go take a selfie outside or do a story going to HMP, wherever it is, saying, yeah, linking up with my man. And it's fucking stupid.
It is, and we romanticize it so much, and obviously
it's the movies as well,
Hollywood
it's the
plays its
TV
part.
series, you know, you talked about that kettle with the sugar. I've seen that like 4 times in 4 different programs, you know, that are centered, or there's a prison scene. And you see that and you think, that can't be real. It can't be that horrendous. Like, everyone's in there for the same thing. Surely, you talk about community, people will come together and they'll just be like, how can we coexist? But then when you describe it the way you have, 23-hour lockdown essentially, and let's say something happened the day before, all they've got is 23 hours to think about that one thing.
And that's why it gets so bad.
And then the egos and the insecurity of how you appear to your fellow inmates is also a factor. And we're not talking about financial crimes. We're talking about violent offenders, drug offenders, and putting them all in the same place and letting them out for half an hour a day. It's just brutal to hear about.
And it's mixed as well. If you go in for defaulting on driving fines and you get 3 months, you'll go to your local jail, and you could be put in with a murderer who's still on remand. So you're sharing a bunk bed with somebody who's in for cutting somebody to pieces, murdering somebody. You're in for not paying driving fines, and all of that is mixed in one. So they're vulnerable people, and people take advantage of them. Yeah. And as you say, we've romanticized prison, and you know, pop culture does and music does, and I'm guilty of it as well. I listen to a lot of grime music, and a lot of that is drugs, jail, violence. And I love the music because I love the adrenaline. Yeah. But when you take a step back, or if you read if you take the music away and the beat and you read the lyrics,
it's terrible.
It's horrific.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I've obviously become a father recently over the last 2 years, got 2 kids, and I've naturally not listened to any of the stuff I used to listen to because my kids are with me, and it's just the language, just the words. And you just ask yourself straight away, why the hell am I playing that to them?
Yeah.
It's nuts, you know what I mean? But that's obviously an easy way to actually recognize it.
Yeah.
If it's only for your own, you know, enjoyment, you will just play it all day, every day, and feed your subconscious mind with that energy, which is so negative at its core. Even with the most banging beat, if you're talking about cutting someone's arm off for a rollie or whatever it is, or you know, selling drugs out the bando, whatever it is, it's like, that's going into your brain. It's feeding some emotion into your body. You know, spiritually, you're taking on the energy. It's just not progressive or positive for anyone. And I think it's again, I commend you for being so honest, man, because a lot of people, they still hold on to that image of, yeah, I was in prison. Yeah, it was for this charge. And they wear it like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And I know people like this, and I pity them because they haven't evolved past their circumstances, and they're still engaged with that self-image of being a criminal is actually, look, it's not necessarily a negative. You made a mistake, right? But actually it's a positive. And, you know, because I've done this, this, and this, and I've been convicted, the whole world knows about it. Now I can use it to my advantage to do more of that.
Social credit. And
social credit, exactly. Criminal credit. Let's move away from that though, bro, because it's fucking too deep for me. I can't even go any more deeper into that side of things. Talk to me about after you've come back out. So fresh home. What happened? So how did you literally, because you've talked about you lost your partner. I'm assuming it's not the partner you're with now.
It is.
Oh, it is? You've come back together. Yeah. Big up.
There's a happy ending.
That's nice. That's nice. So anyway, you went through that whole experience. What happened? How do you rebuild and regroup from there?
It's been difficult, man, and I think...
Or maybe you haven't. You know what I mean? Maybe you're still on that journey.
It's taken me longer than I'd have liked. Last time when I come home, it took me all of a week to find my groove. I'm positive, it's great, everything's great.
I'm on.
But adjusting to life being somewhat different. You know, if we're going from such a high to such a low, to trying to find out where I'm going to fit now. Because obviously I've still, and to be fair, those who endorsed me before what happened are still endorsing me now because they know that it's so old and they know that it was a kangaroo court, you know what I mean? For what I got given, it's the longest sentence in all of Jersey's court history for that particular crime. They threw the book at me and they gave me a double sentence for the same crime, and that's never happened in the history of that court. So you know, there's enough black and white evidence there for people to go,
we get it.
It was a stitch up. Yeah. We still endorse you, but there's still a level of apprehension there from certain people. Do you know what I mean? And as I say, I lost the JD deal, which was huge, and that's, you know, that took a lot of the spring out of my step with my clothing brand, because I was like, fuck this, man. I put so much energy and time into this, as you know yourself. You know, I threw everything at it before I come away, and you know, the brand, I've had the brand 10 years, and it done big numbers to its own standards, running up to me going away, and we had this deal on the table with JD, and then I go away, and the press butcher me. And what they ran with, just to, you know, just to go back on it just for one more second. The press ran with, you know, been arrested for conspiracy to import drugs to Jersey and money laundering. But I'd never been arrested for money laundering. But the press had ran with that, and what that actually meant was, if we have an exchange of drugs, if I have, you know, an amount of drugs that's worth £20 and you give me a £20 note, we do that exchange. We've both just laundered money. Now, to anybody outside of the courts, if you say money laundering, you think he's washing money through a business. Because that's what I think when I think the term. He's washing money through a business. That's what money laundering means. It isn't. That is what's called removal of criminal property. So I take that £20 off you, that's removal of criminal property, but that falls under the Money Laundering Act. So technically it's money laundering. But you try explaining that to a you know, somebody,
a brand,
somebody as commercially significant as JD. Oh no, this is what it actually means.
You're like, you're chatting absolute waffle.
And even if they believe you, that's not what it says in the press. So how can we associate with you?
Yeah, it's branding, isn't it?
But at the same time, I'm like, you guys stock all the Bugsy Malone stuff, and all he talks about is drugs and fighting with people and everything else. Do you know what I mean? I was like, you know, there's a degree of hypocrisy here, but I do get it, because at the same time, as you say before, if you've got two people who are socially relevant and they both got clothing brands, one's got tainted history and one hasn't.
Well, recent tainted history is harder to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah, you're going to go with...
And the understanding as well in these kind of meetings, which I've sat in many commercial meetings on, you know, various brands, the people who are making these decisions, they have no relatability to that world. Yeah. And it's a cut and dry, and it's easier just to say there's a hard no policy on this, and this, rather than having that compassion and empathy.
What's the journey?
That's actually what's the truth. Because again, from the brand's perspective, why should they care? At the end of the day, they've got the opportunity to collaborate with whoever they want. And it's like, for the creators who are creating the brands, who want the distribution at that level, obviously it's gut-wrenching, because like you said, you put 10 years into growing this brand, and now the opportunity is there. And then from the circumstances which are out of your control from years ago, and then to not have that communication or conversation even taken into consideration must have been tough.
Yeah, it's hard, and I'd already experienced this in COVID, and in the first kind of week when everything kicked off, before it became obvious that we were going to win the battle, I had chief execs from some of the biggest companies in the industry on the phone to me, endorsing me, but saying, look, we can't endorse you as the brand, but look, we put money into your fund, look, we're completely behind you, we're in the boardroom today, everybody's talking about you, we're all behind you. But publicly, they didn't say a single thing until I said, look, I've had meetings with the Speaker of the House of Commons, I've met with MPs, we're going to win this, it's going to be announced in the next few days. Then, everybody, we're fully behind you, Nick, the brand's behind you, we're sharing everything, we're all over every big gyms, we're all one part of this. I'm like, you guys won't take a gamble, even if you believe in it, to the very core, if you believe in it so deeply on a visceral level, but you still won't take that step because, brand. Yeah. But I do get that, but at the same time, I'm like, most of these brands have been built from the bottom on them kind of beliefs, but once they reach a certain level of success, we can't touch that.
Do you feel like there's a correlation? Because you've spoken about two really different groups so far. You've talked about the groups that you've removed yourself from the previous criminal activity when you were fully engaged, lost your head, you're a nutcase, to then the groups you're speaking about now. Both of these groups have massive influence on your activities in your life. They're suppliers and they're distributors. Do you feel like there's any correlation between, the behaviours of those groups, their self-interests, and does that match up at all in your kind of line of judgment? Because it sounds like a lonely place to be, and it sounds like that experience, I just feel like hollow about it. It's just like empty. Like it's like just you feel like WhatsApping FFF. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, for fuck's sake, man.
It's frustrating because so many people and so many companies live their lives so superficially. Everything is, and obviously the rise of social media from, say, the Instagram boom from 2015 onwards, all that's done is exacerbate the existing problem of people putting on this facade of, we need to look at a particular way, we need to feel a particular way. Yeah. And that's just amplified it tenfold. And it's a really dangerous place to get yourself in because people are just pretending all the time. Now, it's a really sad thing to acknowledge because 70-80% of the world are portraying a life that they don't actually live. And that is really, really sad. And they will say one thing to you personally, but they'll mean something completely different, and everybody is so fake. They're just wearing this veneer that they think people want to see, and that's really, really sad. But the caveat to that and the positive to take is when you do find somebody that's real, they're rare, and you hold on to them people as much as you possibly can. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I take from it. You could focus on the negative of, look, the majority of people have got themselves so lost trying to brand themselves. They've lost their person and then they then become the brand, and that's the danger. But when you meet somebody who is exactly what they present, hold on to them people as much as you possibly can because they are rare, but they're the kind of people that are worth having around you. And I've got lost in this myself sometimes with social media. Like, you put content up that represents you, or do you put content up that gets you the best engagement? And the more you continuously go down the left path of, I'm going to put stuff up that people want, that starts to modify your own behavior and your own lifestyle before you eventually then become this person. And is that the person that you want to be? And then there's a famous quote from a guy called Nathaniel Hawthorne, and I'm probably going to paraphrase it slightly, but he says something like, no one man can pretend to be somebody that he's not for so long before eventually becoming, completely immersed in that person. You lose yourself and you become this person that you were originally just pretending to be, and you lose yourself completely. And once you go past a certain point, can you go back? Because if you're getting so much social gratification, so much engagement being this alternate you, are you going to go back to this person who's going to get 10% less engagement, 20%, 30%, 40%? And I fell down the hole of chasing engagements through COVID. And if I'd have carried on doing what I was doing, I'd have had 3-4 million followers, not a problem. I was growing exponentially by the day. And I could have carried on going down that route because that's what people wanted to hear. But it was taken away from my health. It was taken away from my social relationships. It was damaging my relationship with my partner, with my friends, because it was all consuming. But that would have been a very quick road to more success. But once you're that person, that's then the person that people expect you to be, and that's who they want you to go on television and be and everything else. And as soon as you start demonstrating the person that you actually are, he's weird, what's going on here? Yeah.
Can you not talk about that?
Yeah.
What we're talking about is authenticity. And I've had similar experiences myself where, you know, the easiest way to describe it is you start flexing. And it's no longer enough to really be successful behind closed doors. I've now got to present success to the world.
All the time.
And not just to the world, it's the vehicle of social media. I know if I put the best business advice on, I'll tell you how to build the best campaign completely free, what to spend, where to spend, who to target. That's not going to get as much as engagement as me standing next to my Porsche Macan GTS and just literally standing there with an arrogant expression on my face. And it's just all, for me, because I've got that context of being conscious about social media, traffic, and what works the most. It's like I've always tried to not be that guy, but it's the way that it is. And there's dumb money, there's more dumb money in the market than smart money. So to appeal to the mass audience, you've got to appeal to the mass audience. But then it's like you said, there was a point where I had so much content of me in that car, which I've sold since, but it was honestly like, all I'm going to post now is my car, but I'm not validated by a car because I know Joe Bloggs over there, who drives an Aston Martin, is an absolute loser who knows nothing about nothing, and does affiliate deals with whatever accounts he does affiliate deals with, and it's like that was like really a tough thing for people to go through if they've got true expertise and skills in the real world. But then it's like you want to maximize your opportunity on social media for new audiences, new relationships as well. And I feel like that's a really accurate way of describing it. And I think for me, if it wasn't for my fiance always telling me like,
that's not
calm down, chill out, also cringing at some of the stuff I'd put up, and I'd come back to you like, that was so cringy. And your social media self comes out and you start defending it. Yeah. Oh, you don't know about social media. Look, this is what people want to see, da-da-da-da. And then you're like, whoa, I'm defending someone who I'm not even actually, that's not me. But you're naturally going to defend it. It's like that Spider-Man film, Venom, and it starts consuming you all over your body. And next thing you know, you've become this avatar, which is just completely removed from your authentic self. Back to your most recent recovery, economically, mentally. So you got back with your partner. How big of an impact? Because I see her a lot on your social media now. I see you guys enjoying, experiences. Most recently on Valentine's Day, even I was like, whoa, hello. But how big of an impact has she played in helping you get through this difficult time?
Huge, man. I mean, losing her into my sentence was something that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever endured.
Why did it happen?
In truth,
in a nutshell.
In truth, because of how I treated her through the whole COVID experience, and my attention was so spread across news and social media and everything else that I wasn't paying enough attention to my family, my friends, and my partner, and everything else was prioritized. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I lost myself quite a lot again, being that person that people wanted me to be rather than being myself, and I neglected to take care of my friends and my family, and put everybody under a lot of pressure. And obviously we had press all the time, and we're getting harassed.
As busy as anything.
Yeah. And it never stopped. And I didn't give her the care or the time that she deserved. And it was probably a long time coming. And prison was just an easier opportunity for her to just rip the Band-Aid off and go. Oh, yeah. And I don't resent her for that whatsoever, because in my opinion, she should have left before I went away. That time apart has only served to bring us 100 times closer. And we've been, I come within a few weeks of me coming home, after we thought the doors were completely closed, we linked up, and it was like, well, this definitely isn't over. This is far from over, do you know what I mean? It's still there, and if we can nurture this into what it can be, we've got something really special here, because we get on like a house on fire. We're super compatible, similar interests, we have a great time together, and she's like my best friend, and we've we've nurtured that over the last few months, and we've become super strong. And it's been a blessing. Do you know what I mean? It's helped me focus and stay in the right direction, and because of losing hair, because of losing myself last time, it's made me hyper conscious of not going back down that route again. And I've turned down TV opportunities since I've been home. I've turned down press since I've come home, because I'm wary of that taking me back down the hole again. And what's more important to me now, getting that 5 minutes of fame or somebody who I'm potentially spending the next 50 years of my life with? It's not worth sacrificing that for this, as much as it's great.
What's your relationship to money like now? Because obviously all of that press and all of that public personal brand was equating to more transactions, more sponsorship opportunities, more distributors and collaborators for selling your merch. Obviously that's all for a money incentive, right? It's commercial success. How has that transformed, you know, your relationship to money, where you're doing the drug stuff, that's all about the money, right? And also obviously the ego and the accolades on the street. Then you go into the business side with the gyms and growing these commercially successful gyms. And then, you know, you're here now, like, talking about the balance between, oh, I don't want to do these appearances because it's going to naturally take my time away from the things that I value the most. So it seems like there's been like a shift in the values that you're placing on certain things in your life versus the financial things in your life.
Prison taught me a lot about money, and before I went away, I was killing it, making between 10 and 20 grand a week by sending a few text messages. That's it. So it was minimal output, maximum input, and that you can't spend that. I was making my mother's yearly wage in a week, sat on my bed sending 2 messages. Do you know what I mean? And that was big money. But as I say, everything became really numb. Buying new cars, holidays, everything else, but you don't get that same kick out of it. And then I went to jail. The whole concept of money changed completely, and you then begin to understand what the most valuable commodity in the world is, and that's time. And that's the one thing you can take away from prison, is the value of time. And you can't get that back. And I'm not even going to attempt to remember the quote, but there's a quote from Iron Man, Tony Stark's dad, and he talks about time being priceless. Because if you get to the end of your life, if you ask Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, when they get to 70 years of age, 80 years of age, they've got their billions. If I could give you 30 years of your life back, would you give me every penny you've got? They'd give you the lot. There's nothing more valuable than time. And this is what I try and explain to my friends. And this is what our conversation I had with my friend Aaron this morning. People make the mistake of going from, right, I've got a 30 grand job, great. I've got a promotion, I'm now getting a 40 grand job. Now, instead of thinking, I can probably work less now and gain 1 day back a week, they don't. They increase their expenditure, they get a nicer car, a nicer watch, more stuff on finance. So they're still working the same amount of time for the same things that they have, just superficially looks nicer. And you end up stuck in this loop where you don't retire till 65, 70. Like me and you, we probably, our legal retirement age is probably going to be pushed into 70 by the time. And then what have you got left? You retire at 70, poor health. You've got 5 years left to enjoy your life. So now I value time more than anything. There's no amount of money you could give me where I would say that's worth more than a year of my life. I'd have given you anything for that. When I got that time in jail, if you'd have said to me, Nick, give up 70% of what you own now and you won't go to jail, I'd have given you it in a heartbeat, because it's worth more than anything. You never ever get that time back. So now I prioritize it, and obviously there's a balance. You still need money to live, but I live, and don't get me wrong, it's nice to have nice things, but I wouldn't say, right, I'm going to take on another 6 months worth of work because I want to buy something new. It's more important for me to have the time, and that's precious. And I've lost a lot of close people around me who've passed away, and you get that immediate regret of, I should have spent more time with them. And the recurring theme is time, and there's nothing more valuable than time. And that's where I am now, and I'm really grateful that I'm in a position where, in terms of my passive income, I'll probably never have to work for the rest of my life, so long as I live within my means. If I start buying £300,000 cars and census this and that, probably going to reach a point where I'm going to have to work again. But I don't want that. I'd rather live with a little bit less and have all this free time. I don't set an alarm. I'm not on a schedule. I don't have a diary, as you well know. It gives me anxiety to even have plans. I wake up whenever I want to wake up. I do what I want to do. And for me, that is more valuable than anything. For people who work 9 to 5s, and I've got friends who work really hard. And again, the guy that I come up with today, he works himself into the ground for his family to make sure he can provide, and barely has any time for himself. And that's a huge sacrifice for somebody to make. And if you ask that person what's the most valuable thing in your life, it's my one day off with my family. It's my time. It's not where I can spend my money on nothing else. It's time. And so many people lose sight of that when they get more money and they buy the fancy car for Instagram and they get their watch and we're going to get bottle service in the club this weekend for £200, and they've only made £250 that week on their wage. And that to me doesn't make any sense. It should be minimal output, maximum input. Find your level, find the midpoints, find what you can live on comfortably where you still have a nice life, but it's not above, and start reducing your hours. I'd rather, I say to my friends, look, if you've got a pay rise and you're in a nice position, work 4 days a week instead of 5. You can already get by on the money you had before, so take a day off, take 20% of your week off. Use that time to do what you want to do. Go and travel over a weekend, go and spend some time educating yourself. What are your interests? Go and do something, live your life, because you're going to get to 60, 70 years of old. If you're even lucky enough to live that, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. You're going to get to 70 years of age and all you're going to do when you're sat on the sofa is regret. I should have done this, I wish I'd have done that when I was healthy. And we're still young enough now that we have opportunities around us to do what we want to do. And it's important, and there's nothing more valuable than that now, and I think that's something that people really lose sight of.
100%, bro. What a fucking day.